Hello, weirdo. I have more cross stitch happening. This is a gift. We are going to be doing the second half of my August reading thing. All of the books that I read in August. So as a reminder, I wrote it down. 25 books. And I'm going to show you 13 of them today. And we'll try to keep my hands up so that you can see what I am doing. The first book that I finished was Forbidden Mafia Prince. This is by Brooke Blaine and Ella Frank, and this is like a queer, like mafia style, like romance, with, you know, people getting kidnapped, and an age gap and stuff like that. So this is explicit queer erotica. It was fine. I don't think it was anything like mind-blowing. I personally liked the high stakes of stuff like this. But that's just who I am. I like things with like high angst. You have this one character who is dealing with the pressures of he is the heir to this mafia family, and you have another person who is kidnapped who thought he was adopted and didn't know anything about his birth family, and turns out he is the heir to the rival gang, basically, mafia family, and he's being used to taunt his family, essentially, that he didn't know about. So yeah, I mean, I thought that this was enjoyable, fun, and yeah, I don't really have much else to say about this book, specifically or in particular. I've gotten this far. I'm adding blue to this moon. So yeah, that's about as far as I've gotten so far. The next book that I finished is The Silk Roads. This is a new history of a new history of the world by Peter Frankopan. This is a thick, dense book. It is a history book. It talks a lot about like the world, which is very vague. But it takes a really like economic view on history, and specifically focuses on like the Silk Road and how the Silk Road was made and how it was used and the history of that, which I really liked because it was a whole lot less Eurocentric, and I think more history needs to be done this way, where and it also like acknowledges that like, hey, the world is a lot more connected and has been very connected for longer than most people think. And I thought this was just going to be focusing on the Silk Road and when the Silk Road was at its peak, and this brought a lot of things up so went a lot further into history, into like modern history, to talk about some modern issues, and by modern I mean like stuff that's like happening today, when it comes to the Silk Road and like implications of stuff like that. So I wasn't expecting that aspect of the book, and I really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed that. So I think this is a really good history. It is, because it's so dense and it's so like the scope is so large, you kind of can't have a super in-depth look. So it is very much an overview, but I think that this book would be a good like jumping off point. So if there's anything in particular that you found interesting like from this book, I would encourage you to continue on researching and things like that. So while this book won't answer like all of the questions, it'll give you a good idea of the overall overarching arc of history. It'll give you a good like idea of the overall arc of like history and how stuff has worked. I really enjoyed that aspect of this book, and I've added another line of blue, so there you go. It's Sorted Past. This is from the Smut Peddler, which is basically like a bunch of different artists, queer artists, come together and like tell erotic stories, right? And it's a graphic novel, so there's a bunch of different art styles and stuff like that. And this is primarily focused on the histories, where I think in some of their other work it is not focused on like history. It's like modern smut type of things. Yeah, I know the Smut Peddler has a whole series on like older people, so that's cool. I really enjoyed the diversity in the stories that we saw here. Some of them were longer, some of them were shorter, with a vast array of art styles, and I don't know, I just enjoyed it. It was a fun, sexy, smutty time. It was, I really don't know what else to say. It was cool. Lots of trans rep in it that I really enjoyed seeing that. That was really fun. So yeah, that was this one. There's like so many books that are just smutty that I read this month, or at least in the latter half of this month. So this next book is Cruel Seduction by Katie Robert. This is the latest book in the Dark I don't know, whatever it's called, the like Greek god retelling, and this follows Aphrodite, Hephaestus, and Adonis, and those are the 4 people involved. And if you thought the 3rd book in this series was like a fuck pile, which I did, and I really enjoyed that, this one is even more so. So you have Aphrodite and Hephaestus, who are forced to marry, and neither of them are super excited about it. They're just like, yep, this is a thing that we have to do, for essentially the politickingness of it. And you have Aphrodite, whose ex is Adonis, and Adonis was like, I really don't want you to do this. I don't think you'll be happy. And she'll be like, and she was like, I don't care. Like, I'm going to do this. This is for my family. And Hephaestus has his, like, adopted sister, Pandora, and she is, they're both, like, protecting each other, but Pandora is really, really taken with Aphrodite. This did not have as much, like, high drama as I wanted it to. I mean, it was very clear that that wasn't really the intention behind it. So I think I liked book 3 in it more because there was just so much more high drama in terms of like the interpersonal relationships, like lots of drama between them, and there just wasn't as much in this, which is fine. It's a polyamorous representation, which is huge. That doesn't like demonize polyamory, which I really appreciate. So I really liked that and appreciated that. Yeah, this book also, you definitely can't read this book without having read the rest of the series. Yeah, just because of the amount of references that it makes to other things that have happened in previous books, and kind of how this world works in general. You just need that background information, which I think this is like book 5 or something like that in this series. So yeah, I'm really liking that this series takes an approach that everybody is expressed to be canonically bisexual unless stated otherwise, which I also really appreciate. And I just love that as we continue through the books in this series, that they become more and more queer and more polyamorous, and there's more and more different kinds of representation in these books. And that just makes my little queer gay heart happy. So let me finish the stitch and I'll show you. Okay, so that's how much blue we've got going on in our little moon guy. This next book is A History of the World in 6 Glasses. This is by Tom Standage, and this is another history book where we are looking at overarching histories, and we're looking at history specifically through 6 different glasses, which I thought that this book was compelling and interesting before I purchased it, and then I wound up purchasing it because it's a book that like my students had to read like over the summer. Yeah, what can I say? I really enjoyed it. I really liked how this book didn't just focus on like European history and talking about like how, you know, beer and wine was used, that it really took a wider view and looking at many different parts of the world and how they dealt with these things. And I really liked at the end when it talks about what is like the next, you know, phase of life and what is the next drink that defines like our modern era. And they said water, like the author said water. And I was just like, oh my gosh, that is so true. And he kind of lays out why he thinks it's going to be water. Yeah, it left me with a lot to think about, which is something that like I wasn't expecting to get out of this book, and I really, really enjoyed it. And he brings up like climate change and stuff like that, and how that is going to affect water, who gets access to water. And yeah, it's just going to be, climate change is going to be a very interesting time and to live through. That is definitely the case. I don't really know what else to say about it. This is a good book. I would recommend it. Pick it up. Here is as far as I've gotten in my little moon. Figured that going for filling up the moon first would be best. In the Lives of Puppets by T.J. Klune. This is like a retelling of Pinocchio. It's gay, which is great. We have asexual rep for the first time, which is, I think, one of the first times that T.J. Klune has had asexual rep in his books. I don't know. It's T.J. Klune. It's going to be a really good book. That being said, I think I've enjoyed it the least out of all of the T.J. Klunes that I've read. But that is because this focus of this book is much less so on like a person changing or a relationship, and a lot more on a father-son dynamic between Geo and the human, which I still really thought it was good. I just like I just prefer the other books a little bit more because of that. But yeah, this is set in a world where humans have been completely wiped out, and Vic is one of the last humans that exists. We're not entirely sure if there are more, and the entire world is ruled by robots. Geo, Vic's father, is a robot, and he invents things, and so does Vic. And Vic is working in the scrapyard and to find things, and then discovers a robot named Hal, who doesn't have any memories, and so Vic decides to fix Hal up. And Hal is like a human exterminator robot, but has like damaged like programming, so has had his memories wiped and doesn't remember. But in the process of like saving Hal and fixing Hal up, Vic gets cut in the scrapyard, and that brings more murder robots to where they're living, and Vic's life gets turned upside down, and he has to go on a journey to save his dad. Yeah, it was really cute. I really enjoyed it. I feel like saying it's standard T.J. Klune fare is like not fair, but it's also like not untrue at the same time. So yeah, if you like T.J. Klune's work, you're gonna like this. Oh, the other thing I wanted to say about this was that I really enjoyed the side characters, the little vacuum and the nurse robot. I thought they were so cute and adorable. I really enjoyed having them in the story. I was a big fan of them. I think they added a ton of comedy that was very needed in a very like heavy story at times. Yeah, let me finish this stitch, get some water, and I will be... So this is as far as I have gotten. We're getting a lot more blue. This next book is The Poppy War. This is by R.F. Kuang. This is the very first R.F. Kuang that I've read, and I have been, unintentionally sleeping on The Poppy War. Like, I knew it was good, but dang, it's good. Lots of commentary on war, stuff like that. Obviously, this is a war film, but also on different people, lots of thoughts on genocide and stuff like that. Yeah, it's an intense book. You have a main character who is basically oppressed and like treated poorly her entire life. Doesn't really know where she's from. She is an orphan, and she is determined like get a high score on a test so that she can go to a military academy. And she does get this specific mark on this test to be able to do so. And from there, yeah, lots of stuff changed. I don't want to give too many spoilers. It's very good. Just go read it. Like, I feel like it took me forever to read this book, and I'm just glad I did, and I'm going to be continuing on with the series. I've already finished book 2, so I'm waiting from the library to pick up book 3. Yeah, I don't really have much else to say specifically about this book, but it was good. It was good. Go read it. And here's how we're doing with the blue. The moon feels like it almost has like a beard. The next book that we're going to be talking about is Tiger Eye by Marjorie M. Liu. And this, like, what's interesting, I don't necessarily know if I liked it or didn't like it, but you are following this this young woman who has magical abilities, and she is she's a sword crafter, and she gets this box from this Chinese market and basically summons a shapeshifter who is forced to be her slave because of the curse that he is under. She is horrified and does not want him to treat him like that, because she's like, you're a human, I'm going to treat you with kindness and respect. And he's just like, what? No one has ever treated me like that, especially since I've been trapped in this curse. They develop feelings for each other. Sex happens on multiple occasions. It does take a while for that to happen. I don't know, this is a very interesting, like, straight fantasy that I was watching. I don't know. There is more to the series that I don't think I will be reading, because I just didn't feel like I needed. But then there's this whole, like, mystery where she, like, made a knife, and that knife was used to, like, kill this kid, and the kid was, like, the child of these, like, gangster people who are trying to kill everybody associated with the murdering of this child. And I just felt like that was, like, I don't know, not a super compelling plot. So some of the way when they're trying to figure out who did what, I just didn't care. I did find the things with the shapeshifters past, and that being entangled in the story, that being more interesting, because that's a whole other aspect to the story, because as they are trying to figure out, hey, like, what is going on with, like, I'm trying to be murdered by this, like, gang, essentially, the shapeshifter is being, like, hunted down by, like, this sorcerer who wants to capture him, essentially. Yeah, I found the let's capture the sorcerer aspect to be much more compelling, plot-wise. Yeah, I don't know. I think I would have liked this a lot more when I was younger. Maybe I would have liked it more, like, if it was gay. I have a good answer for that. It wasn't awful, but it just wasn't, like, doing much for me. And here we have more Moon Man. The next book that I read is A Touch of Malice by Scarlet St. Clair. And this is the third book in this, like, Hades x Persephone thing. I really am enjoying this series. Be careful, it is triggering. This is, I think, the one where you're dealing a lot with the aftermath of some things with Persephone. That went down in the second book a lot more. Like, she's having a hard time sleeping with Hades, like having sex with him because of her assault that she experienced in the last book. Tensions between humans and gods are increasing. Demeter is also, like, making it snow and making just things more difficult and crazy, or I don't know if that's the right word, but, like, it's snowing all the time. The weather is awful because Demeter is pitching a fit about the fact that, like, Hades and her daughter are, like, dating and engaged to be married. They do get engaged in this book, I believe. I do not remember if they get married, though. I can't remember that off the top of my head. Yeah, I like this book. I thought it was good. I don't really have much else to say. It is very smutty, which makes it fun, at least for me. And this is how far I'm getting. We're almost getting to the smile, which is like exciting. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sorry if I'm like out of it. It's like really warm. Next book we have is Sinful. This is the Sinful Mafia Prince. This is by Ella Frank and Brooke Blaine. This is the sequel to the, what was it, Forbidden Mafia Prince. This one I did not enjoy as much as the first one. I think because of like that like novelty has kind of like worn off, and I don't know, I feel like the resolution between the conflict of the like heir to the mafia family and his father, specifically about him being gay, I feel like was resolved like super quickly. But I don't know, I still enjoyed this. I don't really think, sorry, my needle like de-threaded itself, which is like annoying. I don't know, with this book, I feel like I got exactly what I wanted out of it. And I got what I paid for, if that makes any sense. Sorry, it's like, in this kit that I have for this, the like thread is super short, which is fine. It's just annoying because I have to thread needles more often. Do I have anything else to say about this? Yeah, I don't know, it's gay and queer, you know? It's a little bit of aspects of like BDSM and like people being brats. I don't know. It's good. This is as far as I've gotten. There's more stitches, I swear. I promise. There's more stitches. Next one. This is Hymns of the Republic. This is the story of the final year of the American Civil War. And I don't know why I thought this was going to be focused a whole lot more on like Reconstruction. It says right there that it's focused on the last year of the Civil War. So I don't know what was wrong with me, because I was like, oh, I was expecting it to focus a lot more on Reconstruction. And that's on me. Yeah, this is a history book about the last year of the Civil War. I like S.C. Gwine's, like, his history stuff. I like how he writes. I think he's very good at painting pictures of, like, what it's like to live in certain times or with certain people. I think he's very, very effective at that kind of writing. And I think this is further exemplary of his work, if that's a word. Civil War is one of my nerdy niche interests. This was a book that I liked. Don't necessarily know if I learned anything, but that's okay. I don't have to learn things from every book. And overall, it was a pretty interesting read. Very, very silly review, I feel like. I finally made it, so we're touching the bottom of the mouth. The next book I don't actually have a copy of, and that is For Treasures of the Sky. This is by Jenny Tingley Zhang, and this was one that I read for my Goodreads project, and my dog chose it, and I'm like kind of mad. Not that this book wasn't good. This was also for the historical fiction category. This book is just so sad. I didn't know what to expect from this book, and hearing the author interview at the end, I think really helped put this whole book into perspective, just about how important it is, because it essentially seeks to like answer like what happened to these Chinese men who were unfairly accused of murdering a man and basically hung in a very, very grotesque way, and which is a true story. There is a landmark of this in I forget which state in America, and it really seeks to expose and talk about a lot of the ways that America specifically exploits and or at least has exploited Chinese labor, and seeks to expose like the racist underbelly. In this book, you're following a young girl. She, is born and grows up in China, and her parents disappear. She doesn't really know why, and she has to cross-dress on the streets of the city to try and make money so that she can survive. Then she, through long story, she winds up at this calligraphy shop really likes it. It's like one of the happiest like times in her life. But then she's kidnapped and she's trafficked to America. And then there's child prostitution. And that was unpleasant to read about. The fact that there is child prostitution in this is not a mark of like this book being bad. It just was, I was not expecting it and I was not ready for it, and it just keeps getting sadder. And so this is just a really sad book to read, and I guess it's not entirely fair to say that it just keeps getting sadder, because she does make her way out of prostitution, and it does get sadder for a little bit of time, but then she like finds roots in like this general store and puts down some roots and like starts working towards going back to China and finding her way back to China. And a lot of the times she is like cross-dressing as a man throughout a good portion of her life. I don't know, this book is just sad. It's a necessary and important book, but I wasn't ready for it going into it, and it was sad to read. I think it was written well, and I think that really helped me get through this book, because it didn't really feel like it was a slog at all at any point. I guess I'm kind of like upset with myself that I didn't know more about this book going in, and yeah, that child prostitution was just like, oh no. It just was really, didn't come out of the blue, because there's all this like lead up that goes into that story, but it just was sad. And I guess one thing that I will appreciate about this is that you can tell that the author has done her research to figure out that maybe not this exact story was somebody's life, but the different aspects of, this woman's story you could find in other people's stories. Which I always appreciate that in a book, especially a historical fiction book. But yeah, it's that child prostitution though, it really was sad. This is as far as we've gotten. We've finally gotten up to The Smile. The last book that I read in the month of August is Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. I didn't really like this book. I felt that it was very boring and very pretentious, and it just kind of like literary fiction. Not really for me, because this basically tells the story of like Shakespeare's, a little bit of how they met, which I enjoyed those portions of the story the best, when we were like in the past and we were seeing the relationship between Shakespeare and his wife grow, and like the things that they do. What I find interesting is that they never actually say that it's Shakespeare. I liked that decision. I think creatively, I think that worked really well. And you're really, really focused primarily on Shakespeare's wife, right? Especially when we get into the whole aspects of Hamnet the child, who was like Shakespeare's son, who did die. The actual death of how that worked in the story did not work for me. It was like, that's not how science works. You cannot trick a sickness into thinking you are your sister and it will murder you instead. But I understand that that's kind of not the point of the book, but just kind of, it's just like, this is why books like this are not for me, because it tries to be so like grounded in like reality, but then all these like weird shit happens that like, and I just was like, I just don't have patience for this. And I also did not enjoy the writing style. It was very like, it's like the best way I can describe it. Yeah, I really struggled with the writing style on this. I did not enjoy Hammet's chapters. I thought that they were annoying to read through. I did not find him like very interesting at all, because most of the time he just is running around trying to find a doctor for his sister. But then I think it really got picked up to being interesting when you are focusing on Hamlet's wife, especially in like the present and in the wake of Hamlet's death, and her reaction to seeing the play Hamlet. And that I found to be interesting. I just wish more was done with it. because that happens so late into like the book, and like not much is done with it. And I don't know, I think it would have been really interesting to be able to see inside like Shakespeare's mind and see like why he did this, and they like can have a conversation about how they are both reacting to the grieving process that they've been in. I don't know, I think this book tried to like brush over the fact that like Shakespeare was cheating on his wife and stuff like that, when that was not really impacted in their relationship, when this book was actively trying to show Shakespeare as someone who loved his wife, at least initially. And I don't feel like the author did a good enough job transitioning into why Shakespeare would do the things that he did. But again, his perspective is not super like central into this, especially in the like present. You get a lot of him in the past, but not the present. So I don't know, there were things that like definitely did not work for me in this book. This book did like do well in like the BookTube Choice Awards. It got the top three the year that it ran. Yeah, I think I just need to like steer clear of like literary fiction unless it's something that I think is truly compelling, and this is not one that I think does. Yeah, that is kind of my thoughts on this. I'm gonna put it down. So there you go. Let me finish this stitch. This is as far as I've gotten. So hey, going from nothing in the moon to something, that's good. Yeah, so the second half of August was okay. Let me know if you've picked up any fun hobbies in August. Because over the summer I did pick up the hobby of cross-stitching and I'm having so much fun with it. So yeah, let me know. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.